everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's Journal with Me session, I'll be documenting a lovely day I spent with my soul sister last August. It was a nostalgic and culture filled day revisiting some iconic museums in the Philippines, places I hadn't been to since my grade school days. So grab a cup of coffee or your journal and let's create scrapbook pages together. Now let's start journaling about the day's memories. For today's layout, I'm going with a vintage theme to match the timeless vibe of the museums and the charm of Intramuros. Visiting those places truly felt like stepping back in time, from the grand architecture of the National Museum to the cobblestone streets and old churches in the walled city. I wanted my journal pages to reflect the same nostalgic and historic atmosphere. Before starting, I gathered some vintage theme supplies that I think will work well for this spread. Having your materials ready before you begin can really help minimize distractions and save time, especially if you tend to get overwhelmed by too many choices during the creative process. Right now, I'm grouping the photos by location. Since I want to keep the layout in chronological order, a little storytelling trick that helps me remember the flow of the day more clearly. I'm allotting the first page of the spread to the National Museum of Fine Arts. I'm beginning by moving around the elements to find a layout I'm happy with, kind of like solving a visual puzzle. I want to place the Spolarium photo sticker right at the center because it's such a powerful artwork and deserves a focal point. But before I stick anything down, I thought it would be nice to add a bit of background texture. I'm using a vintage script design paper. Tearing the edges gives it a more worn aged look, perfect for a vintage theme. Here I'm adding distress ink to the torn edges to give that soft age effect. If you have a blending sponge or tool, that's great, but since I ran out, I'm just applying the ink directly to the paper. It's a little messier, but it works just well. So, just a tip, don't be afraid to work with what you have. Sometimes limitations can spark creativity, and that's part of the fun of journaling. On the right page of the spread, I'm focusing on documenting the second half of her day, starting with our visit to the National Museum of Natural History, followed by our lunch at Barbara's in Intramuros. For this layout, I want to use subtle accents to reflect the cultural theme of the day. I'm layering a tiny Philippine flag sticker over a piece of vintage style design paper, which adds texture while tying in the patriotic vibe of our Manila trip. I selected key moments from this part of the day to highlight, which is a photo of the Tree of Life atrium at the museum, the Barber's Restaurant logo, snapshots of the delicious Filipino dishes we ordered, and a still from the flamenco performance we watched during lunch. If you remember, this is the packaging from the Spolarium sticker pack I showed you earlier. The paper has a beautiful print design that matches the color theme of the spread. To create visual contrast and variety, I'm using a circle puncher on the paper, a small detail that adds shape and breaks the rectangular flow of the photos. Now I'm adding it to the lower right collage to anchor the section. Now let's move on to the next spread, where I'll be documenting the rest of the day, our church visits, our time at Museo San Agustin, and our cozy cafe stop at Figaro. For the top left part of the spread, I'll be dedicating the space to San Agustin Church. I'm using this vintage design sticky note with a clock print as a backdrop. I thought it was fitting since the church felt like stepping back in time. The intricate Baroque interiors, the painted ceilings, and the solemn beauty of the space really left an impression on me. From the bottom left section, I want to add a bit of interactivity by creating a pocket using this vintage journaling card from Tim Holtz. I plan to tuck our museum ticket inside the pocket later on. It's a nice way to store memorabilia without crowding the layout, and it also makes the spread feel more personal and tactile. enhance the visual appeal, I'm adding some vintage style rubber stamps as decorative accents around the page. They help frame the church and museum theme and tie in the overall old world vibe of Intramuros. Now let's go back to our first spread and add some finishing touches. I'm writing the title Museum Day inside a bordered label sticker to serve as the main header for the layout. Next, I'm adding a simple location pin icon beside each place we visited and writing down their names. To make the text pop, I'm underlining each one with a yellow marker, just a soft highlight to give them more emphasis without overwhelming the page. Finally, using my trusty Twisby Echo Fine fountain pen, inked with J. Herbin Laidethe, I'm journaling about the day. It was such a fulfilling experience. Not only did we get to immerse ourselves in art, culture, and history, but we also revisited places from our childhood with fresh eyes. Visiting the national museums and walking through the halls of San Agustin Church and its museum made me appreciate how much effort goes into preserving our heritage. Ending the day at Figaro, enjoying coffee and dessert was the perfect way to rest, reflect, and just enjoy good conversation with my soul sister. It was one of those days that made me feel grounded, grateful, and a little more connected to our roots. Thanks so much for joining me in this Journal with Me session. Before we go, I'd love to know, do you enjoy visiting museums too? Which kind do you love most? Art, history, science, or something else? And if you haven't visited one in a while, I highly recommend making a day of it. It's such a meaningful way to rediscover your city and connect with its culture. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more journaling inspiration. And if you're into memory keeping or using a traveler's notebook, make sure to check out my playlist linked below. See you in the next one. Bye!